what happened to G Money happened to him. You know what I'm saying? What do you think about that?
I don't know. Like, I'm gonna put it like this: shit. G Money know the reason what happened to him. You feel what I'm saying? Like, if he was here to tell a story, then he'll tell you. Like, he know the reason what happened to him. Some might say cheese, some might say Instagram, whatever the case may be, but he know the reason what happened.
NBA Lil Pap just got hit with 5 years for being an accessory to G Money's murder. But that's only half the story. What they don't tell you is that Pap ain't just anybody. He's NBA, Ben 10's big brother and one of YoungBoy's most loyal soldiers. This dude wasn't just down for the gang, he was ready to throw away his freedom for it. No joke, while most rappers walk around with bodyguards, YoungBoy had Pat, a man who jumped headfirst into the fire without thinking twice. From the start, he was riding for NBA, and everyone in Baton Rouge knew his name carried weight. But when you find out what really went down the night G Money got hit and how Pat managed to beat that case, you'll be speechless. Then to see him head straight back to the trenches afterward, that's wild behavior. On the streets, Lil Pap was feared like no other, the kind of dude who made rivals think twice before talking slick. But the feds had their eyes on him long before the headlines. The G Money situation didn't just end TBG's biggest name. It cracked open how far NBA's street ties really went. To see why Pap would risk everything for YoungBoy, you gotta rewind the clock to where it all started. Back in the early 2000s, Baton Rouge, Louisiana was already a battlefield. But once the 38th Street block came into play, things turned deadly fast. That's where Deandre Fields, better known as NBA Lil Pap, came up right in the heart of one of the most dangerous zones in the city. This wasn't no regular neighborhood. This was survival training from day one. In this part of Baton Rouge, kids learned to dodge bullets before they learned to ride bikes. Pap came up in a single-parent home, with his mama doing everything she could just to keep food on the table. His pops, locked up on drug charges, gone for years, leaving her to raise Pap and his little brother Ben 10 all on her own. The streets started calling early, and by the time Pap hit 12, he was already running with older guys who were deep in that life. He wasn't just playing around either. He was learning how the game really worked. Ben 10 was right behind him, watching his big brother move through chaos, but Pap always made sure to keep him out of the worst trouble. Still, when you grow up where every corner got its own set of rules, there's only so much protection you can give. See, Baton Rouge ain't like other cities where gangs wear colors and wave flags. In BR, it's all about your block, your blood, and who you're willing to ride for. No exceptions. Pap's side was beefing with multiple sets, and he learned early that respect wasn't handed out, it was taken, usually through violence. The 38th Street area where he grew up was wild. Different crews running each block, all trying to control the same ground. You had the bottom boy guerrillas holding down one side, the top boy guerrillas pushing on another, and smaller cliques sprinkled all over. Pap was learning the politics of the streets before he even hit high school. By 13, he was already carrying a gun to class, not to show off, but because he knew dudes from rival blocks were out there hunting for him. One wrong move could have ended everything. Pap's name was ringing through the streets fast. This quiet young dude who didn't talk much, but if you crossed him wrong, you might not make it home. The first time he really made a name for himself was when he was just 14. One day, a few older guys from a rival set tried to rob him and his little brother while they were walking home from school. But Pap wasn't going for that. Instead of handing over his chain and money, he pulled out his piece and started busting shots. One of the robbers caught a bullet in the leg while the other two took off running for their lives. Word spread like wildfire. This young dude wasn't one to play with. People started whispering, "That boy Pap, he's solid." By 15, the street said Pap had already caught his first body, though nobody talked about it out loud. He wasn't bragging or flexing online like the new generation. Pap moved in silence, and that made him even scarier. While other teenagers were thinking about school, sports, and girls, Pap was learning how to move like a ghost, calm, calculated, and cold when he needed to be. To really get why Pap became who he was, you gotta picture Baton Rouge back in the early 2000s, a city about to blow. Lil Boozy had just been locked up on murder charges, and that left a hole in the streets big enough for chaos to pour in. Every crew wanted a piece, corners, territory, respect. And the murder rate was climbing like crazy. Baton Rouge was turning into a battlefield, and Pap was right in the middle of it. Back in 2012, Baton Rouge was out of control. The city recorded 83 murders in 1 year. That's more than what some entire states see. Young dudes were dying every week, and the cops couldn't even keep up. It was like the Wild West. only this time with automatic weapons, Instagram beefs, and street pride on display for the whole world to see. Pap was growing up in a place where showing weakness wasn't an option. If you hesitated, you were gone. In that kind of world, being tough wasn't enough. You had to prove you were willing to do whatever it took, even take a life. And Pap proved that more than once. What made him even scarier wasn't just the violence, it was how smart he was with it. While other young shooters were sloppy and got caught quick, Pap studied the streets like a chessboard. He learned from old-school hustlers who'd been through it all, soaking up game like a student of survival. He understood the real rule. Real power comes from silence. No witnesses, no bragging, just results. Then came the twist that changed everything. Around 2014, when YoungBoy was still just Kentrell, a hungry teenager chasing the rap dream, he needed more than talent. He needed respect. Back then, TBG was showing him some love, but YB wanted his own squad. People who would ride for him, not just record tracks beside him. That's when his path crossed with Pap's. The streets say Pap met YoungBoy during some neighborhood tension. YB was beefing with a few local dudes over a girl, and things started heating up. According to people close to the situation, Pap stepped in without hesitation. He didn't even know who YoungBoy really was, just saw a young dude getting pressed and decided to handle it. The word is, it all went down at a house party when some guys from a rival set pulled up ready to start trouble. And that's when Pap made his presence known. The story goes that some dudes at that party started plotting to rob YoungBoy for his chain, trying to humiliate him right there in front of everybody. But before they could even make a move, Pap stepped in. He didn't yell, didn't argue, just walked straight up to the main guy running his mouth, pressed a gun to his head, and said, "Y'all got a problem with my little homie?" The whole room froze. Not a sound. Those dudes backed off instantly and left that party in silence. Right then, YoungBoy knew. Pap wasn't somebody he wanted against him. He was somebody he needed beside him. But here's the real thing that made YB respect him. Pap wasn't chasing fame or trying to look tough online. This wasn't no wannabe gangster. He was cold, calculated, and real. A man who moved with discipline, never talking too much, never leaving a trace behind. Once YB started bringing Pap around more, that's when NBA stopped being just a label. It turned into a movement, a force in Baton Rouge that everybody had to respect. Let's make it clear, NBA wasn't only about music. It was a full-on operation with YoungBoy as the voice and Pap as the muscle keeping things in line. While YB was in the booth dropping hits, Pap was in the trenches making sure nobody messed with their business. But their bond ran way deeper than just business. Pap saw himself in YoungBoy, a young dude fighting to make it out but still tough enough to face the dirt if needed. And YB, he saw Pap as the big brother he never had. Someone who'd stand by him no matter what. What's wild though is that you'll barely find pictures of them together. No Instagram posts, no party shots, nothing. That silence said it all. YoungBoy knew that keeping Pap at a distance was the smartest move he could make. If anything ever went down, he could say, "I barely knew the dude," and stay clean on paper. But behind closed doors, everyone in the streets knew what was really going on. Pap was getting paid good money to be YB's personal enforcer, the one who handled the dirty work no one else could touch. As YoungBoy's music started blowing up, Pap's role became even more serious. NBA wasn't just about dropping hits anymore. They were building something much bigger, a full-blown street empire stretching from Baton Rouge all across Louisiana and even into neighboring states. And in that empire, Pap was the man you didn't want to see coming. When dealers fell behind on payments, Pap pulled up to remind them what they owed. When rival crews tried creeping onto NBA territory, Pap made sure they got the message, loud and clear. He was like the CEO of violence, keeping order through fear and precision. By 2015, YB's fame was skyrocketing, and that street money was fueling everything behind the scenes. Studio time, shows, videos, all of it. Pap was making more money than he ever thought possible, but he wasn't out here flaunting it. While others were buying chains, cars, and designer clothes, Pap stayed quiet, stacking up, buying weapons, and keeping a lawyer on retainer just in case. What made him priceless to NBA was how clean his work was. When Pap handled a problem, it stayed handled. No loose ends, no witnesses, no second chances. But all that success came with a price. The feds had started to take notice. They were tracking NBA's moves, tapping phones and putting names on files. And at the very top of that list, Pap. By 2016, the tension between NBA and TBG wasn't just music beef anymore, it was turning deadly. G Money had been going hard at YoungBoy, throwing shots online, talking about his sister, and clowning him every chance he got. But what really lit the fuse was that viral Say Cheese interview. In it, G Money didn't just diss YB. He straight up disrespected everything YoungBoy stood for. He bragged about being with YB's sister, called him ungrateful, and made it clear he didn't see NBA as a real threat. That interview spread like wildfire, and everyone in Baton Rouge was talking about it. YoungBoy saw it, and that's when things changed. He knew this couldn't be handled with a diss track. This was deeper, in the streets. When somebody comes for your name that publicly, you can't let it slide. If he ignored it, the whole city would start thinking NBA was soft. And in that world, looking weak could get you killed. According to people close to the situation, YB called a private meeting with his tightest circle, only the ones he trusted with everything. Pap was in that room, sitting quietly, listening while YB laid it all out. He told them straight up, G Money crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The disrespect was too loud, too personal, and it demanded a response. Now here's where it gets heavy. The feds could never prove what was said that night, but the streets got their own version. They say YoungBoy never gave a direct order, but he made it real clear that whoever handled the G Money situation would be taken care of for life. Pap didn't need to hear it twice. He knew exactly what that meant. From there, the plan started coming together. Pap wasn't reckless. He was patient and methodical. He started watching G Money's every move, his hangouts, his routines, the people around him. He studied it all until he knew exactly when and where to strike. G Money had a routine, and that's what made him vulnerable. He always hit the same recording studio on Dallas Drive, usually late at night when the streets were quiet and few people were around. Pap noticed that quick. He started watching the spot, keeping tabs on who came with G, how long he stayed, and what kind of security he had. And the more Pap studied, the more he realized G was slipping. G Money was moving too loud, posting his location online, tagging the studio, and showing up at the same times every night. It was like he was giving out a free schedule. On September 9th, 2017, everything lined up. G Money was at the Dallas Drive studio, working on a feature and letting everybody online know exactly where he was. That one post, that was his first and final mistake. According to what the street's been saying, Pap got the word that G was in the booth, and it was time to make a move. He grabbed his team and rolled out to Dallas Drive. They pulled up quiet, waiting in the parking lot with the lights low, watching that front door. The plan was simple but deadly. 2 shooters by the exit, and Pap sitting in the getaway car with the engine running, ready to peel off the second it was done. When G Money finally stepped out of that studio, he was by himself. No security, no lookout, nothing. He was probably thinking about the new track he just laid down, not knowing what was waiting outside. In seconds, shots exploded through the night, fast and precise. G Money collapsed right there in the parking lot, and by the time anyone realized what went down, Pap and his crew were already gone without a trace. The whole thing was over in less than 30 seconds. Silent planning turned into chaos in the blink of an eye. Here's where things get wild. Pap wasn't even the one who pulled the trigger. Word from the streets says he was the driver and the mastermind behind the whole setup. He planned it, directed it, and let one of his younger soldiers handle the trigger work. That's how calculated Pap was, always thinking 2 steps ahead. He made sure his hands stayed technically clean while still calling every shot from the shadows. When G Money dropped, the impact was instant. Baton Rouge went silent for a moment, then exploded with talk. The whole hip-hop scene felt it. One of TBG's brightest names was gone, and everyone already had a pretty good idea of who was behind it. But proving it, that was a whole different game. The way the hit was pulled off made it even more chilling. No witnesses, no camera footage, no fingerprints, nothing. Pap had every detail mapped out, from how they'd get away to where the weapons would disappear afterward. This wasn't no messy street shooting. It looked like something straight out of a movie, a professional hit done with precision and patience. The streets started buzzing right away, people whispering NBA had something to do with it, but nobody could bring hard proof. And while the city was still trying to process what happened, Pap's name started growing even more powerful. His reputation hit another level, the kind of respect that came with fear. G Money's death wasn't just a loss for TBG, it was proof that Pap could make somebody vanish and still walk away untouched. And word was, this wasn't the first time Pap handled business for NBA. The street's been whispering that Pap's name was tied to way more than whatever hit the headlines. Folks who really knew what was going on say he was involved in multiple situations that never even made the news. When YoungBoy's manager, Big Dump, was killed in 2018, that was TBG getting payback for G Money. But Pap wasn't about to let that slide. He He made sure NBA hit back twice as hard and twice as loud. According to word from the block, Pap was connected to at least 3 more murders between 2017 and 2019, and none of them were random. These weren't spur-of-the-moment beefs or reckless shootings. They were carefully planned hits meant to protect NBA's name and wipe out any threats to YoungBoy's growing empire. One of the coldest moves Pap ever made was against a TBG affiliate who had started talking to the cops about G Money's murder. The guy thought he was safe, packed up, moved out of town, laid low, but Pap found him anyway. The streets say Pap made sure that man would never speak again. Then there was another one, a local drug dealer who tried muscling in on NBA territory. Pap didn't just handle him quietly, he turned it into a warning. He left the body out where other dealers could see it, sending a message that couldn't be mistaken. Don't touch NBA money. What made Pap different from the rest was how silent he stayed through it all. While other dudes were flashing guns on Instagram, chasing clout, and running their mouths, Pap stayed in the shadows, letting his actions speak for him. He knew real power moved quietly. YoungBoy understood that too. He knew Pap would never fold, never snitch, and never run. And in return, YB made sure Pap's family was looked after, and that he had top lawyers ready anytime the heat started rising. But with every move Pap made, the heat started rising, fast. All that street violence had caught the attention of the FBI, and soon they were building a full-blown RICO case against NBA and everyone tied to it. Pap's name was popping up everywhere in their files. Agents had wiretaps, surveillance footage, and informants, all pointing straight at him as the muscle behind NBA's operation. By 2018, the feds were closing in tight. They'd been stacking evidence for over a year: phone records, hidden recordings, witness statements, and secret photos. To them, the G Money case wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The investigation started peeling back layers, showing that NBA wasn't just some rap collective. It looked like a street empire built on drugs, guns, and payback. The deeper the feds dug, the more dangerous it looked. They mapped out how NBA's network stretched beyond Baton Rouge, reaching into other states, moving product, money, and orders like a small army. And at the center of that enforcement branch, the one keeping everybody in line, was Pap. His job was to silence threats, handle problems, and make sure no one dared to cross the crew. Federal agents had eyes on him for months, following every move, documenting where he went, who he met, and what time he disappeared into the night. They already suspected his role in G Money's killing, but what they needed was something solid, evidence that would actually stick in court. Then came the moment that cracked the whole thing open. One of Pap's own associates got picked up on heavy drug charges, staring down a life sentence. When the walls closed in, he flipped. To save himself, he started talking, giving the feds a detailed breakdown of NBA's inner workings and Pap's role in multiple hits. But even with a witness ready to talk, the case was far from over. Pap still wasn't the type to go down easy. The feds knew from the start. Building a solid case on Pap wasn't going to be easy. He was too calculated, too disciplined, and too smart to leave anything that could tie him directly to the crimes. Most of the people who could have testified were either gone or way too scared to say a word. Still, the feds kept pushing, and in 2019, 2 years after G Money's murder, they finally made their move. Early one morning, they surrounded Pap's mama's house. Quiet neighborhood, but the feds rolled in deep. Trucks, vests, rifles, the whole block locked down. They expected a fight, but Pap didn't resist. He just stood there calm, almost like he'd been waiting for that day to come. When they cuffed him, he didn't say a word. No excuses, no panic, no cooperation. He knew the rules of the game, and he played them flawlessly. Pap's legal team, all paid for with NBA money, came ready for war. They fought every single charge, every piece of so-called evidence, line by line. The prosecutors painted Pap as a cold-blooded killer, Baton Rouge's most feared enforcer, the man who handled every dirty job for NBA. They brought in witnesses to talk about his rep and his street power, but when it came to proof, they didn't have enough to nail him for murder. The defense came in strong with one strategy: deny everything and make the government prove every detail. Pap's lawyers argued that he was being targeted just because of who he rolled with, that the feds were really after YoungBoy and trying to use Pap as the fall guy. And during that trial, things got wild. The prosecution revealed that Pap had been under surveillance for over 2 years. They claimed to have phone recordings and snippets of him discussing street business, coded conversations, quick calls, things that made it sound like he was still moving heavy. But even with all that, there were gaps. Nothing that tied him directly to the trigger, nothing that could break his silence. But those so-called recordings the feds bragged about, they didn't really say much. Everything Pap said was coded, vague, and never directly incriminating. He knew better than to talk reckless on the phone. When the trial wrapped up, the jury went back and forth for 3 long days before finally coming to a decision. They couldn't convict him on murder. The evidence just wasn't strong enough. But they did hit him with a charge for being an accessory after the fact. The judge handed down a 5-year federal sentence, and Pap took it like a soldier. No breakdown, no reaction, not even a word, just that cold stare. He knew deep down he got off lighter than most expected. 5 years behind bars was a small price compared to spending the rest of his life in a cell. While Pap was locked up, YoungBoy made sure his loyalty didn't go unnoticed. His commissary stayed full, his family never struggled, and he had solid protection inside. That's real loyalty. And that's exactly why Pap never even thought about flipping on the crew or working with the feds. But prison didn't break him. It sharpened him. Inside, Pap's name carried weight. Nobody tested him because his reputation walked in the door before he did. Still, being locked up gave him time. Time to think, to reflect, and to start planning what his next move would be once he touched freedom again. While Pap was locked down, he didn't waste a single minute. He used that time to hit the books, studying law, learning how the system really worked, and figuring out how to beat any future cases that might come his way. But even behind bars, Pap kept his ties strong on the outside. He stayed in contact with the right people, making sure NBA's operations ran smooth like he never left. The loyalty between him and YoungBoy stayed solid the whole time. YB made sure Pap's people were straight. His kids' school was paid for, his mama had everything she needed, and money was always flowing to his family. That kind of loyalty is rare, and it's why Pap never folded. Not once. Even when the feds tried tempting him with deals, shorter sentences, and protection, he stayed silent. Other inmates caught wind of who he was and tried to get him talking, hoping to use his words for leverage. Maybe sell some info, maybe cut their own deals. But Pap wasn't going for it. He shut that down fast. Everyone in that prison learned quick. Bringing up NBA business around Pap was a death wish, even behind federal walls. Then came 2022. Pap finally came home after serving most of his sentence. You'd think after everything he might lay low, chill out, maybe even go legit, but that just wasn't in his DNA. Within months, he was right back in motion, moving through the streets, reconnecting with NBA, and showing everyone that his loyalty hadn't faded one bit. And here's the crazy twist. Even with YoungBoy on house arrest and later fighting his own federal case, Pap was still holding it down. Still out there making sure NBA's name stayed respected and untouchable. That's the kind of loyalty we're talking about. The kind that doesn't fade even when the boss is out of the picture. While YoungBoy was locked down or under house arrest, Pap was still out there protecting the NBA name, keeping it feared and respected in the streets. But things had changed since he'd been gone. New crews had popped up, old beefs turned even deadlier, and the police had eyes everywhere. Still, Pap adjusted fast. He used everything he'd learned from his time in prison, the legal smarts, the discipline, the patience, to move smarter and stay one step ahead of the law. But even the sharpest players slip eventually, and in 2023, Pap got caught in another storm, a drive-by shooting that left multiple people injured. The feds didn't waste time. They slapped him with 10 counts of attempted murder. Even facing all that heat, Pap stayed solid. No cooperation, no names, no deals. He kept his mouth sealed tight like always. But this time, the feds came stacked with evidence, surveillance footage, shell casings, ballistics, and even witnesses ready to testify. They claimed Pap helped organize a hit targeting rival gang members. 3 people wounded, but all survived. Pap's legal team jumped on defense quick. They argued that the evidence was shady, obtained illegally, and that the government was only going after him because of his past. They said Pap had already paid his dues and deserved a fair shot this time around. The prosecution, though, was painting a whole different picture, trying to use his previous conviction to prove he had a violent pattern, a record of taking things too far. But what keeps Pap such a dangerous figure isn't just what he's done, it's how smart he is, how loyal he stays, and how every move he makes feels like it's part of a bigger plan. Pap's story is wild. This man's been arrested multiple times, faced life in prison, and still never once even thought about snitching. In today's rap world, that kind of loyalty is almost extinct. While most people talk about being real, Pap actually lived it. YoungBoy might have built NBA into a multi-million-dollar empire, but it was soldiers like Pap who made sure nobody could touch it. While other rappers were getting robbed, extorted, or exposed, NBA stayed untouchable. Everybody in Baton Rouge and beyond knew what Pap was capable of, and that reputation alone kept a lot of people from even trying anything. The streets respected him because he never switched sides, never folded under pressure. He had plenty of chances to cut deals, get his time reduced, maybe even disappear into witness protection. But Pap wasn't built like that. He chose loyalty over safety, standing on his code no matter what came his way. What makes Pap's story even deeper is how he balanced that street life with family loyalty. His bond with his little brother, Ben 10, shows another side of him completely. Even with all the chaos and danger around him, Pap always made sure his family was straight. He protected them, supported them, and looked out for their future. And part of Ben 10's success in music today, that's thanks to Pap. He cleared the path long before anyone was paying attention. Now, with Pap still fighting his latest case and YoungBoy facing his own federal battles, their connection remains unshaken. That kind of loyalty, the kind built on trust, blood, and silence, is what made NBA what it is today. And no matter how many cases come their way, that bond keeps their name respected in every corner of the streets. NBA Lil Pap stands as one of the last of a dying breed. Real street credibility backed up by real action. In an era where so many rappers just talk about the life, Pap actually lived it and paid the price for every move he made. His story isn't just about fame or power. It's about loyalty, blood, and the heavy cost that comes with trying to build an empire out of the trenches. Pap's journey exposes the darker side of rap success, the side people don't post online, the violence, the sacrifices, and the unshakable loyalty that can either build you up or bury you alive. Love him or hate him, you can't deny the truth. Pap is one of the realest soldiers the game has ever seen. Now the world's watching to see what happens next. Will Pap beat this new case and walk free again? Or is this the chapter that finally locks him away for good? Either way, his name is already cemented in Baton Rouge history. The streets won't ever forget what he did for NBA YoungBoy and how far he went to keep that name untouchable. If you rocked with this story, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below. Let's keep the conversation going.